All join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. With the palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Nice to have you all here. You're here for the first time. You all came back, huh? Why? Why come back? Why show up?
Gotta do the work.
Gotta do the work. How much work you got?
Lots.
A lot. That's why you sit in the front row. You hear it quicker. What else? Why show up? Say again?
Find peace.
Find peace. What else? Why show up?
Build awareness.
Awareness. Yeah. What else?
Feels good.
Say again?
Feels good.
Feels good. What else? Anybody?
Comfort and acceptance.
Comfort and acceptance. Yeah. That's a heavy one because, we spend so much of our lives in discomfort and so much of our lives feeling not accepted by ourselves and, those around us. What else? Anyone else want to share why show up? It's a good thing just to kind of ponder. Every so often I throw it out there just as a reminder, really for each of you to be aware of why would I show up? And I don't mean just here, but in essence to this practice. For me, showing up here is really just a kind of small sample of what it means to show up to practice in everyday life. Because here it's, you're relatively quiet. I say some things, we sit quietly, I say some more things, you say some things, I say some things, then in an hour we're done. And then you get to go back out there. And that's where we try to bring this practice, what we learn intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, into our everyday lives. It's difficult. As I often say, just because you read one Pema Chodron book about having wonderful compassion for all beings, and then you read this book and you're like, yes, I got it. And then you walk outside and you're, screaming and yelling at the first person to cut you off. And you can often feel like you're not doing well at this practice. And that's where you just have to have compassion for yourself and remind yourself that it's a work in progress. We're just working on it. So, don't be so hard on yourselves. Just keep practicing, keep showing up. So with that, we'll start with the meditation practice. A couple things for those who may be sitting here for the first time or virtually. Virtually, welcome everybody. Sorry I didn't say hello to you. Thanks for being here. There's a chat box on your screen. Feel free to say hello somewhere. But before we begin, nothing's going to happen to you with the meditation practice. You're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Right? Don't judge your practice. Don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are we doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. This practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. So posture, you want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion here at home, however, sitting often helps. Sliding to the front third, pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. If you're on a bench or chair, whatever you're sitting in, shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap if comfortable. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important with this practice, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed, whatever is comfortable. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing, but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, the mind, learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. Most important, the practice of meditation, to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize how you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind. Whatever you're sitting with at this moment has nothing to do with anything I said. It's not from how you sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada. It means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakening. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful. Whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not always fun. It's not an escape. It's direct perception into the present moment. And the present moment is very often filled with chaos, conflict, challenges, difficulty. And so this practice is learning to become aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do in every moment. We spend so much time trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everybody around us. Once we set that down and we work on our reaction, and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. But it's a practice. It's one that requires tremendous patience and tremendous diligence. And if you have patience and you have diligence, you'll be all right. But with this practice, you must have both. If you're not patient, you'll get too frustrated and give up. If you're not diligent, you'll just give up. So, learn to be patient with yourself and keep working. Keep showing up, keep practicing, keep sitting, keep learning and becoming aware of every single thought, every single word, and every single action that you have. And the more you begin to understand that and explore that, you begin to understand the world around you that you're creating and how much you can impact other people. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you do in every moment. It's like holding up a mirror and allowing yourself to just reflect back on yourself. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I always really just prefer to respond to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And we'll use the rest of our brief time this evening. And I'll open up to questions. Again, to those who are joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Thanks for showing up. Same, if you have any questions, feel free to say hello, put them in the chat box there. And I'll do my best to respond. So, questions?
Can you explain what are the precepts?
What are the precepts? They are what will keep you safe, my friend. Yeah. Do you want the 227 version, the 311 version, or the 5?
32nd.
The 32nd version. So the precepts, let's look at precepts in this way. A little bit of context around that. The reason I said 227 to 311 is if you go back to the time of the Buddha, it was called the Vinaya. And the Vinaya is the code of conduct. So they call the Tripitaka, means 3 baskets. There were 3 baskets of teachings. The sutras, which were the teachings, the sastras, which were the commentaries on the teachings, and then the Vinaya, which is the code of conduct for the monks and the nuns. And at that time, they had somewhere between 227 to 311 precepts to follow within the Sangha, within the community. Very often in kind of modern day Buddhism, lay community, you hear people talk about the 5 precepts. That's the first 5. And I like to always introduce them this way. You drive? When you're driving, you come to a red light. Do you have to stop? No. Do you stop?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. I like when people are honest, especially since one of the precepts is honesty, so this works much better. You're already ahead of the game, man. You don't have to stop, but sometimes you do. Probably most often you do. Why? Why stop at a red light?
Keeps me safe.
Keeps you safe, and
Probably other people. Too.
probably other people too. What are other options that could happen when you come to a red light? Just shout out some things. You get to a red light. What could you do? Run it? Stop? What happens if you run it? Depends. It does depend. What are the options? Go ahead.
Oh, people can walk across the street.
People could be walking across the street. What else could happen when you're on a red light?
Nothing.
Nothing. You could get where you were going a whole 2 seconds quicker. You know? So you could harm people who are walking across the street. You could crash. You could nothing. You could get a ticket. Whatever it is. All kinds of things could happen when you run a red light. Red lights even have yellow lights to warn us to slow down. Precepts don't really have warnings, just yourself. But same thing as a red light. They're there to keep us and those around us safe. You could break all 5, all 227, all 311 of them, and you're not going to hell. But you
protocols. We would call them protocols.
You could call them protocols. Sure. So the first 5, right? To refrain from lying. To be honest with our word. To understand, do we gossip? Do we slander? Is our speech necessary? Is it timely? How much time do we spend talking about other people? A lot. Okay. One of my favorite stories when I came back from the monastery, and I was telling my mother, I said, yeah, we eat in silence. And it's just 20 minutes, there's like 1,000 people in there, and all the monks and nuns, everybody's silent. And then you get your food, you eat, and you go, and not a word is said. And she said, well, I guess if you all look the same, meaning you all have your head shaved and you're wearing the same robe, right? You all look there, you look the same, you're dressed the same, and you're eating the same thing. She says, well, I guess there's nothing else to talk about. Right? So we spend so much time talking about others, but to refrain from lying, right? When we lie, we harm people, we harm ourselves. We often lie to ourselves as well, right? Learning to be honest with ourselves and truthful with ourselves. Honest with ourselves when we do things we shouldn't have done. Honest with ourselves when we harm people. Honest with ourselves when we say things we shouldn't say. Like to really reflect on that honestly and say, wow, I shouldn't have said that. Okay? So to be honest about those things. Refrain from lying. Second one, refrain. Often you hear killing, but it's really harming, which is also killing because killing harms. So to refrain from harming. We harm ourselves, we harm others, we harm animals, we harm the planet, we harm so many things throughout our day. So to refrain from killing isn't just like, don't murder someone. Please don't do that either. But it's really about not harming. And what you see in all these precepts is if we follow them, or I should say if we don't follow them, then we actually create greater opportunity for harm. Right? So refrain from lying, refrain from harming, refrain from stealing. Now, I don't mean necessarily robbing a liquor store, right? But we often, what do we take? What do we take from people? Time. What else? Attention. What else? What do we take? Good moves. Yeah, I was going to kind of cue you all. Emotionally, we take from people. People are in a good mood. All of a sudden, we show up and we're in a bad mood. And what did we often take away from them? Their good mood, right? So we can take people's emotions. We can take their happiness. We can take their joy, right? We can take a lot. So refrain from stealing. Refrain from taking what is not yours, in essence. And someone else's happiness is not yours. So allow them to be happy. Try not to ruin their happiness. They have their life, right? They have it hard enough as it is. They don't need your mess on top of their stuff. Right? Refrain from sexual misconduct, right? So this is from our thoughts, from what we view, pornography, the way we see people, right? How do we see them in our mind? Are they simply objects? Or are they actual living, breathing humans? that have emotions and sadness and hearts, right? And then from a relationship standpoint with sexual misconduct, again, you're looking at time of the Buddha, they were celibate, so that was pretty clear. But even if you translate that into kind of what I like to look at as a modern day translation for me, a lot of great teachers, when we have physical sexual interaction with others, are we being honest about it with the other person, right? Are we in a loving, committed relationship, or is it just all about me, right? So look at those things. And the fifth one is intoxicants. Now, this often gets translated simply as drugs and alcohol. But again, bringing it back to the Vinaya, it's really anything that alters the state of mind. So there are things in the Vinaya like garlic, right? Monks couldn't eat garlic because apparently it's like an aphrodisiac and would stimulate things that shouldn't be stimulated. So they avoided garlic, right? My guess is you can probably control your garlic, but the question is, we look at drugs, alcohol, anything we consume, right? Whether you're dealing with addiction or not, even just as like a casual drink, right? You have a beer, maybe not the end of the world. Again, if you're an addict, it's a different story. But you have 12 beers, then it's a different story, right? So lots of things can be intoxicating, truly. I mean, not just drugs or alcohol. So if you think about refraining from lying, harming, stealing, sexual misconduct, and intoxicants, if we stay away or minimize those as much as possible, the chance of us getting harmed and the chance of us harming others, decrease drastically. So I look at them as safety measures, protections from my own heart and mind and the hearts and minds of others. 2-3 times a year, I lead the precept talk with, 40 college students. And it's fascinating because the precepts are pretty much what they're doing. Lying, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and intoxicants. That's college life. So, yeah, does that help? That's a start. What else? Questions on that or anything?
What does it say about, what do you think about just regret or relieving regret?
Yeah, relieving? Yeah. So the question was, those that didn't hear it, what does it say or what do I think about regret or relieving regret? So, when I hear the word regret, what it initially brings up is this thought or idea of wishing I hadn't done something I did, right? Make sense? I mean, regret can be a lot of different things, but that's what I hear. So when I hear and I think of wishing I had not done things in my past, the question is, how do I manage that? How do I cope with that? How do I deal with that? And, for me personally, I got 25 years of things I wish I hadn't done in my past. I mean, truly. Right? I often say, unless somebody in here has murdered someone, I've probably done worse than every single person in this room. And I'm not just saying that to be like humble and modest and like, oh no, Years ago, I heard somebody say there was an article and they read it and they were like, oh, I can't imagine him being mean. He seems so sweet. And I was just like, you guys have no idea what an asshole that was. Truly. And this practice daily, literally every single day for 20 years has helped me understand that it starts with compassion. These are the 2 wings of Buddhism, wisdom and compassion. And with this stuff, it starts with compassion. I must have compassion for myself and forgive myself for being an angry, ignorant fool. That's who I was. That's not who I am. That doesn't define me now. But that was a big part of my life. So I had to have compassion and love for myself and say, Jeff, you did a lot of stupid, harmful things. Now what? Okay. And the wisdom comes into play to understand that you can't change the past. Mark, turn around and look at everybody here for a minute. I'd like everyone in the room to raise their hand if you wish you could have done something differently in the past. Again, lying is on the table here, so if your hand's not up, right? Everyone in the world wishes they had done something different in the past. Those who end up finding a life of happiness and enjoyment forgive themselves. Regret, I don't like that word. Again, this is just Jeff. I don't like the word regret. Regret sounds like, it's just so like angry. You did stupid stuff. We've all done stupid stuff that harmed ourselves and others. And there's nothing we can do to change it. So I'm not going to carry regrets my whole life, because if I carry regret, I'm just going to hate myself. And hating myself was what led me to be an asshole to begin with. Right? Has to be compassion, and regret falls away. Then you can begin to look at past. You can look at your past life and say, that's stuff I've done. And I am sorry for everything I've done. And I'm sorry to those I've harmed. I'm sorry to myself. But I can't change it, man. And that is a daily practice of compassion and forgiveness towards self. And it's changing, for me, it was changing habits and routine, changing places I went, changing people I talked to, changing stories I told about myself. I had to stop being the person that kept living. I had to stop telling the story of the person who was living that way, and had to create a whole new life. It was almost like, creating a whole new identity in a way. And that whole kind of fake it till you make it type thing, absolutely. And for me, not in a healthy way at that time, I wouldn't recommend the way I did it, but for me, it was beginning this practice of non-self, in a sense that we are not the person that we tell ourselves we are. We're just a human doing our best with what we got. And we got a lot of time left, hopefully. So don't have regrets, have forgiveness. What else? Yeah.
You can say anything about the middle way?
Say again?
The
Can I say
middle
anything
way?
about the middle way?
Yes.
Yeah, it's important. So the middle way, or the middle path, you'll hear both phrases in Buddhism, is in essence balance. But where it comes from initially in Buddhist teachings is when he was a prince, right? He had everything. He then renounced his worldly possessions and his long, beautiful princely hair and cut it off and got a bunch of cloth together and sewed it up and put on his robe. And he went from one extreme to the other. Now, at the time in India, there were 5 of them. Once he left the palace, and they were roaming around living kind of these ascetic yogi lives. Do you know this story? Yeah. And he came to a riverbed, and at that time they thought that overcoming attachment to the physical body was the way to overcome suffering. So as Hindus in India 2,500 years ago, they thought, well, let's overcome attachment to physical form and we can become awakened. So they starved themselves. They would hang from a tree for like weeks at a time. They would stand on one leg for like weeks at a time. They thought if they overcame physical attachment, physical body, then they were good to go. Well, he came to a riverbed. And that's actually, without telling this whole story right now, that's the emaciated Buddha behind me. It said that they lived on 1 grain of rice a day. And that he was so skinny, you could literally take your fingers front to back and they would touch from your stomach through your back. So he came to a riverbed, and there was someone there who offered them food. And they were like, no, we don't eat. You know, we're living on 1 grain of rice. And Siddhartha said, in essence, I'm hungry. You know, I don't know his exact words, I wasn't there, but he said something like, I'm hungry. And so he took the porridge, and as the story goes, he set it in the river. And he said, if the bowl goes against the stream, I'm going to eat. So the bowl went against the stream. He got the food. He started to eat. The other 5 guys were like, you food eater, you traitor, you sellout. They left him. And he decided to eat. So this introduces, from the Buddhist teachings, the middle path, or the middle way. In that life as a prince, not necessary. Life is in starvation, not necessary. Find the balance. And bringing it back to today for our lives, that balance, it's not like the Buddha said, this is the middle way. Coming back to your question, I just wanted to give some background to it. For me, the practice is to understand what can be the middle way in your life, in your individual lives, right? So simple examples. Who here has 50 shirts? I see everybody looking at each other, right? They all looked at you. So 50 shirts, right? Could you be okay with 25? No and yes. 2 of you should go to lunch tomorrow and talk this out, right? So the idea is that we have 50 shirts. We don't, okay, so would you be okay with 40? Maybe, we're getting closer. 48, right? You get where I'm going with this. Find a balance. Reality is, if we have 50 shirts, we probably don't need 50. We're probably fine with 30. There's 20 shirts we can give to people who don't have shirts. Right? Think about how many pairs of shoes we have. Like, do you really need, honestly, not what you want, not what you've been conditioned to think, but do you really need 30 pairs of shoes? Need, not want. You don't need them. You want them because they look good with certain pants and certain shirts and certain outfits in certain places, but you don't need them. We want them. And so finding a balance of, maybe if I get rid of 10 pairs of shoes, I'll have a few left. You know? Do you want to rescue him now? So, understand where your balance is. And I like to look at it with simple things. Food, shirts, clothes, physical stuff. Emotions. Find a balance, right? Do you ever get really, really happy and excited? And then all of a sudden, like a day later, you're just like miserable and depressed and want to crawl into bed for 6 months, right? That's not a balance. That's not the middle way, right? I look at Buddhist practice like you got roller coasters, right? Really, really high and they're really fun. This is our lives, and then we just come crashing down, right? The traditional Monday through Friday, grind through Monday, Friday, it sucks. Blow it all off on the weekend and then go back to Monday and hate Mondays, wait till Fridays. So we live these like, to me, Buddhist practice is like the kiddie ride at Disneyland. Nobody gets hurt on the kiddie ride, right? It's a balance. And again, I think it's important for each person to find where their balance is and to not force it. That's kind of what I was referencing earlier to Mark. Like, I went to one extreme, and I don't suggest that. For me, I had to, or it wouldn't have worked for me. But, some people aren't ready to get rid of 25 shirts yet, and that's okay, right? It's not about judging yourself because you're attached to your shoes and shirts and whatever, right? This isn't about judgment. It's not about going home and being like, God, I'm a bad Buddhist because I have 50 shoes. No, it's just recognizing you're probably okay without 50 shoes, and maybe you could, do with a few less. So find a balance. Does that help? Yeah. What else? Yeah.
Yeah, my father went swimming in Hawaii Cove on October 20th. He never came back. And I'm just curious about what the Buddhist tradition says about death. Yeah.
Wow. The question around death and the afterlife, in Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings, he talks about no birth, no death. and that we live truly in minds and hearts. And that the physical form is what we're attached to. But birth and death, no difference. It's just an endless continuation of consciousness. And the physical form is what we attach to and think that where the love is in that physical form, that physical touch, that physical connection. But that people always live in the mind and in the heart. And, you know, the question specifically around afterlife, there was a monk in Taiwan, he taught life and death studies. And he said that the mistake most Western people make, obviously this was his view from a, you know, Hindu, Vedic, Buddhist lens, said that the mistake that Western people make is that we think we have this life and then like we die and then there's going to be a next life, or that there was a previous life. And what he taught was that it's all just one endless continuation. But we kind of break it up as these physical forms. And, you know, when we physically lose people that we love, it's devastating beyond words. But in so many ways, they've never left. No birth, no death. No coming, no going, as Thich Nhat Hanh would say. Yeah. Sorry. What else? Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about death as well, and like trying to keep in mind in a productive way that any and all things that have the nature to arise will also pass. And it's almost like as a, I don't know, like in everybody has problems with modern society in whatever way, but it's like, how do I have like the emotional bandwidth almost to like constantly be aware of, you know, aging and sickness and you know, physical death, and also trying not to, I don't know, like not panic, but just like not get overwhelmed.
Yeah. So if I hear what you're saying, it's, you know, and again, what he referenced for those who don't know is the Buddha taught very clearly, there's birth, there's aging, there's sickness, and there's death. And that's what we get. And we're all going to physically die. There's no escaping that. Ultimately, from the Buddhist teachings, the only way to escape death is to stop the cycle of rebirth. Most people here, most people in Western Buddhism, most people in Buddhism period come into it to be happy and peaceful. But ultimately the Buddha was teaching to free yourself from the cycle of birth and death by not being born, reborn. Now, nobody here showed up tonight because they wanted to make sure they're not going to be reborn. It's not what draws people, you know. But you almost answered, I think, your question, or said it in what you asked, in that the awareness of aging, sickness, and death, it's there. Right? kind of keep it in a little box over here. It's there.
Yeah.
You're older than you were when you came in here. Right? You'll get sick an hour from now, maybe 20 years from now. And you will pass. Maybe tonight, maybe 50 years from now. All of those things will happen, whether you worry about them or not. But what can you control?
My general response to things, I guess.
Yeah, your present moment, your general response to things in the present moment.
Right.
And in the present moment, are there good things in your life?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Huh?
That's it. So many.
So many good things.
Yeah.
So many good people. So many things to be happy about, be grateful for, and enjoy, right? And when we are wrapped up in the fear of aging, sickness, and death, or wrapped up in the regret, going back to the earlier question, we're missing so many beautiful things around us. And again, for me as a practitioner, like growing up so angry, being angry, you lose the opportunity to enjoy what's happening. And, within reason, I think we should enjoy life. Now, enjoy can be interpreted different ways, different people. That's why, I say within reason. I don't mean selfishly enjoy things where we just create chaos and we're just having, stupid fun. But not that any of you would do that, of course. But don't get wrapped up in so much anger and fear that you forget to live. The practice is to, I heard someone say once, don't be afraid of, most people are afraid of dying, and they're not actually living. So focus more on what you have in your life that you enjoy. There's an acronym for fear. I share this a lot, but I think it's really beneficial. Those who've never heard it, false evidence appearing real. And I think it's a really wonderful way to remind ourselves that the things we're so afraid of, we don't even know what's going to happen 5 minutes from now. No idea. You don't even know where'd you park, Ian.
I got a great spot, I'm like right outside the entrance, I'm so sorry.
And are you sure your car's even there?
Yeah, no, really.
Not really, right? I
It's an
mean,
appliance.
maybe we towed it, who knows?
It's just
Right?
an appliance.
But it's just an appliance, So we're so afraid of what's coming next, and we don't even know that, our mode of transportation, or we have no idea what's going to happen next. Nothing. And yet we're pondering, way too far. Just enjoy each moment while you have it, because you don't know when it ends. And when it ends, know that you enjoyed it. But try to go out happy. And, our culture has this thing of rest in peace, and I think to rest in peace, we have to live in peace. It's a start. So try to live peacefully. So I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. All right, a few quick announcements before you all head out from our Dharma Bum host, Molly. Thanks, Molly. And we are looking for a Monday night host as well, so if you're up for this task, which you're about to see now, and you want to come on Monday nights and host, let me know.
Hi everyone, I'm Molly. We opened the Dharmabum Temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They're simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 5 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it, then bring it back whenever you are done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. If a few people could stay to close and latch the windows, that would be helpful. Thank you for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you all again.
Thank you all.